talk to me and you get things. Slack will be cut. Talk to me and I'll cut you slack. Don't talk to me and life happens whether you like it or not. Hate to be a jerk, but that's the way it is. Now, when we're talking about forms, let's talk about forms. Forms are one of the major parts of every user interface that you'll find on the web. Forms are part of almost every desktop application. Everything has a form. A browser, up at the top, there's a URL field, and you fill in the form, which is just one field, and you press the button, or you hit return, and it essentially goes off against that page. Forms are part of every computer interface. For the most part, you don't have to reinvent how forms are built. There's a couple of conventions for building forms that you should just follow. And let's go over a few of them. These are called patterns. For those of you who have talked to me about this before, we've talked about design patterns in some depth. We're not going to go through that too much today. A pattern, though, is a way of doing things that a lot of people have found useful. So it's like a dress pattern. If you want to have a pair of pants, you cut there's two pieces of fabric in your typical pair of pants, two major pieces of fabric, right, the front and the back. You usually get a big piece of paper, and you lay the paper on the fabric, you cut it out with a scissors, and then you sew those two pieces of fabric together, and you get a rough pair of pants. Now you can't make a comfortable pair of pants using just the pattern. The pattern gives you a place to start, gives you a rough idea of how things go together. People used to try making pants out of one piece of fabric. People used to try making pants out of 17 pieces of fabric. Exotic fashion designers still do. But for most of us, if you want a pair of pants, you're going to make it from scratch, you go to the store, you buy a pattern, you cut out your pieces of fabric according to the pattern, you sew them together. Design patterns are the same thing. Software patterns are the same thing. You go to a website like this, you say, well, I'm trying to do this thing. I'm trying to make a form. And it says, okay, here's how a lot of people do forms. Here's how a lot of people do search. Here's how a lot of people do this, do that. And this is a library, or a pattern language is the fancy term for it, where you can find effective solutions to common problems. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Now, every time you get a pattern, just like with the pants, you have to cut that, you have to make adjustments to the pattern to fit the person you're making pants for. And usually a good pattern, if you, does anyone here actually make clothing? Yeah, cool. So you know, or if you ever fabricated something out of metal, it's the same thing. Anyone here ever built a sailboat? It's the same thing. In fact, you go into a sailboat shop, like in Mystic, Connecticut, or like in Seattle, there's a wooden boat museum, and you'll see these pieces of wood that are just the pattern for the ribs of a boat. You take that pattern and you start with that pattern, and then you adjust it to solve the particular problem you're having, or to make the particular set of pants that you want to wear. Okay, so what are some of the patterns that we're talking about with forms? Let's see if they have them. Those are ads. Those are ads. Registration forms. Yeah. Yes, I did that. So here are a lot of things around how to do forms that have pretty much been proven to work. So if you want a date, you want to have a form that plugs in a date, you don't have them type in the date. You use what's called a calendar picker. These are little tools that you get from a decent JavaScript library. If you have a lot of different data that you want to input, and the person has to do this step after step, It's really, nobody likes big, long forms. If you ever had to fill in a really involved job application, multiple pages, it's a pain in the butt. No one's going to sit still for that on the web. So the pattern they have you do that is they work you through a wizard where you go step by step by step through the wizard, and they give you the ideas of how to do this sort of thing, and then they give you a whole bunch of examples on how to work that kind of solution. So here's a form that is being used to do a wizard, and it's got your typical setup in here. It's got a whole bunch of other things. This shows you, just picking at random, here's some examples of good form design. First of all, every form has a label associated, every field in the form has a label associated with it. These fields correspond to the attributes in our table. We're filling in a form here to sign up a customer for our website. So this is the input to the person's table, if you will. It's got a first name, it's got a last name. Typically for user accounts on websites, I have some sort of username. I always have to have an email. A couple of patterns here you'll notice. These are all left justified. Your eye scans right down this edge, and it's easy to see what the next thing to do is. These are right justified. Why? Because your eye wants to follow this line. So the stuff on the left-hand side pushes up against that line. The stuff on the right-hand side pushes left against that line. A good form will have an easy way to scan it. Your eye is always scanning. Another thing that a good form has is feedback. While you're entering the data, if you do it right, it says, good boy. And it gives you a little flag that says that's correct. This is an example of validation. Validation is a huge topic. Validation is a way of knowing that your data is good going in. There are multiple layers of validation. The first layer starts at the form. When you've got a little chunk of JavaScript or in Access, you actually tell Access, when you're building the form, you say, I want this to be a string, I don't want any numbers, I don't want any phone numbers, I don't want anything else, I want a string. And Access will check it. When they type it in, they'll say, yeah, it's a string, we're all good. If it's anything else, Access will have the form immediately give you feedback saying, I want a string. Here's an example of something that's wrong. The form is telling you, no, this data failed validation. I don't know why. Another thing you'll see in a good form is it'll always mark which fields are required and which ones aren't. Nobody wants to waste time figuring out what should I fill and what shouldn't I. The last pattern I want to talk about in terms of forms is something that is unique to people who speak this language and many others like it. Where do you look first? When you look at this form, by show of hands, how many people looked, I don't know, over here first? Did anyone look over there? How many people looked over here first? Nobody. Who looks here first? 5, 6 people. Who looked here first? Okay. Who looked somewhere else? Richard, where did you look?
I looked in the name, the first, last username, the
You
labels.
looked here first?
Labels.
Very cool. Who else? Where did you look first?
Same thing, all the attributes and the text boxes.
You looked in this area? Okay. Someone looked somewhere else? Where'd you look first?
So the green little button on the username.
You looked here first.
No, the username.
Here, that big green button. Very cool. So there's a couple things that come out of our little tiny usability test here. First is that in this country, because we speak English and we read from left to right, top to bottom, you naturally look here when you first visit a page. And they have what's called the L pattern, where people will look here and then they'll look down the left-hand side of the page first. Or some people will look here and they'll look along the top. So your form, your user interface typically has two very important areas. This left side, this top bar. Put a lot of menus up in here. You have a lot of activity where things proceed downward along the left-hand side. Who grew up in a country where they spoke a language that went right to left? Anyone? Okay, it's always interesting that if I have a person from Egypt who speaks Arabic, because their forms are mirror imaged, and their L pattern is always here. It's really cool. And you go to an Arabic site, a website, and you know there's on a well-designed website you can switch languages. If you switch from like English to German, the site pretty much looks the way it is. It's just the text that changes. It changes to German. But if you go to a site that like is Hebrew versus English or Arabic versus English, the whole page flips because
Read
those
from right to left.
because they read from right to left. So you're culturally expecting to go from here this way. In this country, we culturally expect to go here this way. The other thing that we're always expecting to do is move down the page. And so typically the action button, the submit button or the save button, is typically in the lower right-hand corner. And that's where you want to put, people are naturally going to start up here, and go down here, and you want their, it's called a click target. You want their target to be down here. Now when you're working with Access, it uses a form builder, and the tool itself embodies a bunch of these design patterns. It's going to give you a default form, for example, where all these things line up. And you're going to have to work hard to make it do anything else. So there's two ways for you to make sure you design a form that is usable. One is to use a decent tool, and the Microsoft products are decent tools. They are good at helping you produce a functional, if somewhat boring form. It looks decent, it's very usable, people will use it. You won't get delighted users out of a Microsoft product, although they're getting better at that. But you don't want to go too far to the whimsical side when you're dealing with a form, because then it becomes hard to use and nobody wants to think. The other thing you have to do is especially when you're hand coding it, you could build this with CSS, and we'll see how to do that later on in this course. Then you have to apply these principles yourself, and that's where you go steal somebody else's code and go look at how they did it. Oh, I'm sorry, you go license somebody else's code and you learn from it. Yeah, that's about it. This time around, you're going to build a form using the form builder, using Access. So you'll kind of be using these principles because the tool makes you, it helps you out that way. In a couple of weeks, we're going to build a form by hand using HTML and CSS, and you can go to town then, and we'll connect it up in a different way. How many people have actually thought about how forms behave?
Like message forms, like
This kind of web form.
I've thought about it.
You find sometimes you're frustrated at the way certain forms behave. Yeah, forms are a pain in the patootie.
Yeah, look at H&R blocks.
Especially when there's a lot of data. Is anyone here on LinkedIn? Everybody, I would recommend that you get an account on LinkedIn. LinkedIn.
It's like professional Facebook.
Yeah, it's a professional network. What is it? E-D-I-N-E. LinkedIn. They are one of a new set of companies that are doing forms a little different. Now they're giving you the same kind of form. But remember we talked about that wizard where they're going to take you through this one, and this one, and this one. They're going to make you walk through all of these forms and fill out, I don't know how many fields. And you won't get to do anything until you've finished. Because the software programmers know better than you. LinkedIn does it differently. They'll let you fill in a minimum set of forms. I think it's like email and a password. And then they let you go. And then they display something on their site that says, hey, you know, if you just tell me this additional piece of information, you'll be further along. Let's see if I can show you that as easy. That is a wonderful piece of social engineering. So, link. I used to pay for LinkedIn, and I stopped. So let's see what they're actually doing. Let me see. They might not let me see anything. Wait, that's me. Ooh, I've got all sorts of ads now. Yeah. Okay, so here's my profile, where it's basically your resume. Gary Coleman, the guy who does placement and internships here for the CIS department, you're going to want to know Gary Coleman. If you're interested in an IT career, Gary Coleman's the man to go to. Gary says resumes are over, LinkedIn is the way to go. Monster.com is over. If you have a resume, you point them to your LinkedIn profile. Why? Because you got all your data, but it also shows who you know. Because who you know is important. It also shows who is recommending you and who you have recommended. Anyway, the key issue here is there's a lot in this profile. And if I wanted, you notice this doesn't look like a form, but it actually is. How do I know? Well, it did a query on me, and it pulled my name, and it's spitting out all of my attributes. If I want to change that, I click on the edit, and it gives me a tiny little form just for that piece. That's one thing that LinkedIn does very well. It's called edit in place, although this isn't really. The other thing it does is it gives you these little tips here that says, you know, you're almost done. You can go back in and fill in a little bit more of the form, and it's actually, they encourage people to participate. And here's in fact what they want me to fill in. So they give me one thing to fill in. They tell me you're going pretty close to the end here. Come on, you can do it. You can do it. Just feed me a little more information. Why are they doing that? Why are they taking this approach rather than just giving you the whole form and saying fill it in or don't? We don't care.
You're less likely to be.
Good idea. It's a little tiny thing for you to do. It's not daunting. What's the other reason? Why are they so hungry for information?
For marketing.
Because they're selling it. They're marketing it to other people. So every bit of information they can get from me is money in the bank for them.
This is how I got my job interview in Seattle for the training company, B&B.
How so?
One of the guys that I'm linked up with, he worked for the training company up there, and he recommended me. And they know him as a diesel program down here, and then I graduated with the Associates of Applied Science and Diesel Technology. And they're looking for apprentices, so he sent an email to his boss. His boss checked out
Your
his
profile.
profile and sent me a message through and said, "You interested in an interview?"
See, and that's the third reason why we do this, is because we get something out of it. The more information you tell the world about yourself, the more likely it is that you'll connect up with that guy who needs a person just like you. That's the critical thing, is you're talented. There's a guy who needs exactly you somewhere else in the world. The big question is, how do we get these two people to talk to each other? How do we give them that opportunity? And it's through the data. So everybody wins. I win by telling more about myself and increasing the chances that someone will find me and give me a job. LinkedIn wins because they can market their ads to me more carefully. Where are the ads on this page? Oh, here's a poll. They don't actually put an ad on this page. If I go back here, there's the ad. So, wow, apparently I'm a guy who likes watches. And you know, in fact, that's true. I do like watches. That's kind of freaky. Anyway, everybody wins. They get money, I get a job, and as Kay said, it doesn't take me a lot of effort. I don't have to spend an hour filling out a form. I just have to fill in one field. And then they let me do whatever I want. So that is pretty much state of the art in terms of filling out forms. To review, don't reinvent the wheel. If your customer says, I want a form where all the fields are in a circle, because I love circles, you can tell that's a great idea. That's really fun. Can you give me an example of someone else on the web who's doing that? And if they can, you can say, oh, that's great. How many people do you want to actually fill in your form? Let's do it the way
Well, if it
people work.
revolves while you're typing, you
Wouldn't
know,
that be cool?
finish one of it like a roulette.
Kind of like a roulette reel game, you know?
Type, hit enter, goes to the next, type, enter, hits, you know.
Yeah, I bet it's about the conversion rate of about 0. First, so don't reinvent the wheel. How do you not reinvent the wheel? Well, you go to a web pattern site like this where you learn how other people are doing it, or you use a tool that has kind of got these rules of thumb built in. Okay. Second thing is leverage your culture. People expect things to be a certain way, give it to them that way. Your eye naturally scans. One thing we are not going to cover in this class, but you can probably pick up in CIS if you're interested in being a web developer, is do usability testing. This is a company that does usability testing, where you hand your design out to a bunch of people, and they try it out, and they tell you whether it worked or not. This is fun. Has anyone ever been in a usability test? You can make good money. You can make $50 an hour. You walk in, they plunk you down in front of their new product, they make you sign a whole bunch of secrecy documents. And let's see, the last one I was in, it was for HP, and they said, here's your yellow ink cartridge, change the ink. And they gave me a printer. And all they asked me to do was to talk about what I was thinking. And since I've done this before, I was a real chatty participant. Oh, I can't find the door. Where's the door? Oh, that's the door. Look at that. Look at that. Wait, there's a slot here. Is that the right slot? No, it doesn't go in. Wait, how's that work? And they wrote down everything I said, gave me a check for $100.
Wow.
Ka-ching. Being a usability guinea pig is great if you happen to fit that demographic. So apparently they wanted 50-year-old fat guys. I did it. They loved it. All right, this is a way that you can do it on the web, where you hand your design to people and you say, does this work for you? And there's a couple of things that they can do which are really cool. Let's see, do we get a picture of this? Yeah. So remember I said, where did you look first? This is called a heat map, or an eyeball heat map. I don't know if eyeballs are. But anyway, they can actually watch where you look. Sometimes they'll say, move your mouse where you're looking. Sometimes they'll just sit you in front of a webcam. And the webcam will just watch where you're looking. And this is where the people look. A lot of people look there. In fact, most people started here. This is one, and then they looked up here, and then they looked down here, and then they looked over here. You'll notice, like you, most people look at the big colorful thing somewhere in the middle of the page. Typically, everybody ends up in the upper left-hand corner sooner or later. There's all sorts of common heat maps like that old pattern I talked about. This is really cool stuff. And finally, I'm going to hit the high water mark on this particular topic. The last thing you can do, especially with a web product, is you can do what's called A/B testing. A/B testing.
A what?
A/B testing. So if you have a sign-up form, you'd be surprised how many people leave a website. In fact, everybody leaves a website. And for most people who come to your website, the first thing they do is leave, and they never come back. So the big deal for you as a web designer is to get people to stay for just a few seconds. You can get them to stay for just a few seconds. You've caught maybe, I don't know, 5% of the people who visit. That's a big number. Then if you can get those people to start filling out a form, oh man, that's great. And if you can get those people to finish filling out the form, the sign-up form, I don't know, 5 or 10% of the people who start filling out a form actually finish it, it's very disheartening. You can have thousands of people visiting your site every second, and only a handful of them will actually stay long enough to fill out a form and sign it. This is why form design is so important, because the money only comes if they engage, if they come to your site and they stay there and they get involved. Eventually, they either look at your ads or they buy your product. So if your form is hard to use, fewer people will finish filling it out. So how do you figure out, does this form work better than this form? Well, you put both of them out there. You have your web design, you have your web server show this form, Form A, to half the people who show up. And you have your web server show Form B to the other half of the people who show up. That's why if you visit a site, you recommend it to your friends, sometimes it will look different to the next person who shows up. And you just count how many people finish the form. And you'll see that eventually you'll see that, oh, more people finish filling out the Form A than fill out Form B. Let's go with Form A. So if you're designing user interfaces, if you're a web designer, there's cultural conventions, there's design patterns, and there's usability testing. There's nothing like real data to tell you whether it works or not. And you will constantly be redesigning and tweaking your forms to make them easier to use and more inviting. All right, that's it on forms. We're not going to go much deeper than that. And in fact, that's all I've got for you today. So if you want to, we can fire up the processors here and you can try your access stuff. Or if you don't, that's all I got.
You ever been to a website called John Henry Barbecue?
John Henry Barbecue, all one word?
Yeah, this is who I get all my barbecue rubs from. He's got probably one of the dumbest websites, but for some reason, thousands of people flock to it for this dude's spices.
Barbecue like this, spelled out like that?
I believe this. I just put BBQ.
So A/B testing is like how your items are going.
Next one down, John Henry. Yeah,
This is it?
yeah.
Whoever's going to read that? Someone who loves barbecue.
I'm telling you,
I'll answer your question in a second.
Okay.
I'm on his website. Back when he first came out with it, you click a page that said become a guest. And you get all these monthly updates about people barbecuing and their tips on how to barbecue. Now I get like 50 a week. And all I did is put my email address in.
Yeah. Oh, and they're using PP. Wow. So you're a big barbecuer, huh?
Yeah, I've got 2 very expensive barbecues on the back porch.
That sounds good. I've never eaten so much meat in my life.
Yeah, I've got a green egg as well as a Traeger.
Okay, so to answer your question, the first thing I showed you is called heat maps.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Okay, A/B testing is a way of showing 2 different versions of the same form, one version and then the other version. This is A, this is B.
Okay.
And then you count how many people use this one and then how many people use that one.
So it's like making 2 different types of forms and then seeing which one is best and
Right.
which one's people.
Right, and if you've got a website that has a lot of traffic, you can test it out with thousands of people really quickly.
And when I was working at Netflix, they had anywhere from 10 to 50 different tests at any given time.
Cool. So not
So-
just the sign form, but other things?
No, like the complete website. Like some people might have like a list of movies, some people have it side by side. Like everything, they
Very cool.
everything is different tests.
And what department was responsible for doing that?
I had no idea. I was just customer service.
That's
But we
really
were
cool.
able to see what tests were going on though.
So if someone called you up with a problem, did you have to know which version of the website they were using?
Usually we didn't have to, but a lot of people would call up and say, oh, my friend, their webpage looks like this and mine looks different. And we could go in and see like what tests they're on,
Yeah.
explain why that is.
I love that. Some people don't really appreciate that, but there is nothing like the marketplace to tell you whether you've got a good product. Nothing is better. No consultant can tell you whether you're going to sell something than people will know. And it's just really cool to me that I can have a product that is constantly saying, well, would you like this better or would you like this better? Can I change myself to be better? Would you like me more if my hair were green? Would you like me more? Here, I'll changed my hair to purple, you like me more now. Websites are so cool that way. Now, there's a dark side to it, like on Amazon. Do you ever notice that, who here has an Amazon account? Who here keeps books in their wish list, just in case someday they might have some money? Yeah, you should do that just for the fun of it, because every time you go back, Amazon will tell you, oh, the price on that book has changed. And sometimes it's gone up, and sometimes it's gone down.
Yes.
And what's really fun is to get 2 or 3 of your friends that you know have very different buying habits than you, and have them go to Amazon and look at that same book. They will offer them a different price than they will offer you.
Really?
Sure, you bet. It's just like the old marketplaces. You walk up to a market, a guy who's in the marketplace, and he'll offer you whatever he's selling for a price. And he sizes you up and he says, I can get a lot of money from this person, they're from out of town. And they'll ask you for a bigger price. And you either barter him down or you don't, whatever, however you want to handle that. But he doesn't offer the same price to everybody. He offers what he thinks he can get. Amazon's no different. They think they know you because of the big, wide, fat data trail you are leaving across the web. Not only at their store, but at many other stores. And they think, she'll pay $11.59 for this book. And your neighbor, they might think, oh, geez, he'll only pay $20 for this book. Or I can get $40 out of him. He's a student. He's probably got a loan or something. So it's just a very efficient marketplace.
Pretty biased.
It is biased. And there are some people who are very angry with them because at one time, the more books you bought at Amazon, the higher price you paid. Because they figured, he buys books from you whether I charge him an arm or leg or not. And other people said, no, I'm a loyal customer. You should give me better prices than other people. And so that, I don't know how that ended up. I mean, as a private company, or even as a company, they can charge whatever they like. I mean, it's a free country.
Now,
But
does
it's cool.
it go to your advantage to put something in your cart and live there for a while? Do they
Oh, I
drop
don't
the
know.
price trying to convince you to actually buy it?
Yes.
So it's worked for him.
There was like
Seems
a $250 subwoofer that was on there that I've been eyeing for over a year and it dropped out to like 180, so I picked it up like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it seems like that most of the time when I come on there, there's a few that go up, but more of them go down in price each time they go and check.
They'll tell you other things, like there's only 2 left in stock. You should buy one now. And in fact, there are websites that their whole purpose is to do this for you. Like kayak.com does this with airline prices. You tell it, I'm interested in flying from this city to this city. And it is constantly looking for better deals for you. And the more information you give it, the better deal it can find. So a couple weeks ago, I don't know, you probably got this too. Flights to New York are only $100. I really thought, oh, I should go to New York. I have no reason to go to New York. Geez, it's only $100. So a lot of people will buy it as the price.
That'd be cheap. Is that a round trip?
Yeah, is that one trip?
Yeah, it was $139 round trip. Rather than,
Yeah. Go walk